Hello, welcome back. Or if you happen to be new, my name is Delian. This is the channel where we explore becoming the main character of our own lives, which I believe we're all here to do. And this is the Enneagram series where I break down every type and what I believe their journey is towards transformation. So if this kind of content is interesting to you, helpful, or valuable in any way, I would love if you would like, subscribe, or comment. I live for the comments. Tell me about your experience with your Enneagram type, what you would nuance with what I'm saying. This is essentially what I feel like a living document of a channel where we get to explore together. So I can't wait to see you in the comments, and let's go ahead and start. Hello, my Enneagram 9's. We are finally here. Okay. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, essentially what I'm doing is I am answering the questions that would have to be asked in order to create a character and a story that was going to go through a transformational arc. If you hear snoring, that is because Puppy is passed out on the couch right here. So, in every story with a main character who has to go through a transformation, which I think all of the good stories have, you have to answer specific questions. And all I'm doing is I'm answering those questions through the lens of what that Enneagram type would answer it, right? And I think this gives us some insight over how we ourselves can move through that transformational journey, which I think is exciting. I think this is how we truly begin to access ownership to our own stories, which I believe we're here to do. So the first question that gets asked of a character is, what do they want? What is it that they yearn for, right? And I believe that Enneagram 9's want to experience peace, harmony, connection. They want to feel an inner sense of stability and belonging with themselves and the world around them. It's a beautiful one. I think that want is why 9's are so often called the peacemakers, right? But in order to create a good character, you got to have a wound. What's messed up? Because otherwise we don't actually engage so much with the story because there's not a very good clear before and after, right? And I think of the wound because the more I look into the Enneagram, I think that we have a wounded narrative of our type, and then we have a healed narrative of our type. And I think the transformation goes from living in the wounded narrative to the healed narrative. But the wounded narrative, the story that 9's tell themselves, and I think it's the story they tell themselves because it's the story they had to adopt in order to adapt, is that my presence doesn't matter. And instead of my presence mattering, I must instead maintain peace and connection by minimizing myself. Whew, that's a big one. Puppy dog woke up to that. Hi, honey. So then we ask ourselves, what is their instinctual way of moving through the world? And 9's are in the body center, the gut center. And I think that this means that 9's have this inherent gift of understanding instinctually what the harmony level is in all of their environments, right? Is there chaos? Is there, you gotta come lay down over here. Yeah, puppy dog wants to be a part of this apparently. So again, 9's have this way of like instinctually knowing when things are off, when people aren't getting along, or like how everyone is. They have this ability to be able to understand all perspectives, and their body center, they're very aware of their physical self. They're very aware of their surroundings, and I want to get some better language around the intelligence centers. But for now, one of the ways that I think 9's can know that they are 9's is that they are it's like breathing to them. They're very conscious of their surroundings. They're very conscious of where they are in a space and how that space is making them feel. So with that, we move into a fear. What does a 9 fear? I believe that a 9 fears losing connection. I think that they fear experiencing conflict and being overlooked. Like having it confirmed that their desires don't matter. Ooh. From there, we start seeing what how do I want to say this? In the Enneagram world, it's your vice. In a character world, I would call it like the inner saboteur, but it's more like this is what you developed because of this wound and fear connection. And for 9's, this is called sloth. However, I heard recently, and I think it was Jackie Contessa, and if you haven't seen her work, she does great stuff. But I think that she called it disengagement, and I like that. I think that that's more accurate. But let me know if you're a 9. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But it's essentially how I'll define it, whether it's sloth or disengagement. It's if I avoid conflict and merge with others and keep everything calm, both on the inside and outside, I can finally feel safe and at peace. But it means that they have to, again, disengage from their own presence, being a part of the equation there. And it's an internal thing that they do and an external thing that they do. So what is their strategy? How are they going to do this? Well, they're going to adapt to others. They're going to avoid tension and numb discomfort. They're going to maintain harmony and go along with expectations. And so 9's are in what's known as the is it called the positivity triad? But essentially, they have a knee-jerk reaction to reframing things to be more positive. Again, if they do that, then they don't have to get angry. So it's this constant reframing or repositioning events in their minds so that it is happier, calmer. And I think that this is why, so 2's, 7's, and 9's are all in this stance. And I think that out of all of the types, these are the ones who are going to have the most difficulty remembering the pain of their childhood, because they want to reframe that so that they don't have to get angry or upset about those things. But again, with that stance, that strategy, we then move into the stance that the character would utilize in order to make this happen. And 9's are in the withdrawing stance. This is why I think that 4, 5's, and 9's are less seen as main characters of stories. Although, please, 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 if you have main characters in stories, whether it's TV, books, movies, that you identify with, please let me know in the comments, because I want to add those to my roster to be able to utilize when I go into the deep dives, where I essentially use the characters, their stories, and showcase how this transformational arc works. So I would love to know what character 9's you think are out there. But essentially, because 9's are in the withdrawing stance, they're going to meet those needs, as previously mentioned, by withdrawing and preserving their energy, and they're going to withdraw their own preference in order to preserve harmony, and they do that to avoid conflict, which they believe is synonymous with disconnection, or even synonymous with chaos, which does not work for them. They don't want that. This is also, they're withdrawing mixed with their positivity stance, this is what I think creates the ability to merge, right? So 9s are known as merging with the energy or preferences of everyone around them. And this is a kind of invisibility cloak that they use, not just so that other people don't see them, but so that they don't have to see their own anger at the injustice that they're experiencing of not being seen. So, what is the transformational part of this journey? For 9s, the transformational truth is the opposite of the wound. So the wound, let's remember, is the narrative that says my presence doesn't matter. Whew. What's the opposite of that? My presence matters. My presence inherently matters. I do not have to disappear to create peace. My desires, opinions, my voice are valuable parts of the whole, of actually creating true harmony. And I want to say this right here. The transformational part of all good stories is Act 2. It is the longest part of the journey. It is perilous. It is difficult. It is the training montage. If we don't experience the character having to truly work through this part, we don't feel satisfied at the end. And I mention this because I don't think this happens overnight. I think this is the work, this is the muscle we're here to build. We have been, generally speaking, living in the wounded narrative for a long time. And so moving over into the healed narrative is going to take diligence every single day. Diligence to essentially shift into the new narrative. And when 9s do that, and essentially I think of that as like they're going through the Act 2 and the big part as they truly face this and overcome this, in story terms. Then they get to move into this ending of Act 3, which I think is when they get to experience existing in their virtue or their empowerment, their true sense of, like, when I talk about characters going through their arc, I think that we're all here to embrace and embody some lesson so that we can become our fullest, truest selves. And for 9s, as they embrace that healed narrative, I think that they step into this embodiment of, in the Enneagram world, known as your virtue. And I think that this is self-engagement. And I think that is the process of actively participating in one's own life rather than numbing out or going along with everyone else just to keep the peace. And it means recognizing your own desires. It means setting boundaries. And this is when, as you move into that healed narrative, you take action on your own behalf. Whew. I think this is like 9s, when they move into this space, they somehow, in my experience, feel incredibly powerful because they have all of this ability to understand everyone's perspective. But as they bring their own perspective into the equation, it's almost like there's this ripple effect of believing even more so that the 9 believes my presence also matters and my perspective truly matters, versus it being a way to make it so that their presence doesn't matter more. Like there's a lifting up that I experience when 9s are living in this space that really affects me positively. And so as 9s go through that, the shift happens when they begin participating in life from a place of self-awareness and that self-engagement rather than self-forgetting. 9s have a preference to, again, forget themselves, numb out to themselves, to believe a narrative that says that what they want doesn't matter. It's more comfortable. That's a big part of the Enneagram journey, is that our wound tends to be more comfortable, even though we don't like it a lot of the time. And comfort at being able to move through the discomfort of growth is really courageous. So again, 9s, as they move into this shift, they stop confusing peace with avoidance. And in that, they discover that true harmony comes from bringing their full self to the world, which is incredible, miraculous, I think. I just love it so much. So, yes, I find this journey for 9s in particularly interesting because I think that 9s do a lot. So 9s are in that withdrawn stance, which means that it's interesting, they have doing and thinking and feeling all accessible to them. And I'll dive into this at a different time, but essentially, action is the least accessible, especially productive action. So, but 9s do a lot, but they tend to not consider their own preference in what they're doing. And as they do the work of letting their preference be a part of the equation, their presence to be a part of the equation, they become embodied and they become very present in their own life, in their own story, and they become like this beacon of light for other people. That's been my experience with 9s, and it's really, really somehow like deeply comforting to be around, even though they also will challenge me. But their challenging comes from this place of what feels like real understanding of me and real connection with me. So just want to say that like I think that 9s need to know how important it is for those of us who truly want what's best for you, like you stepping into this space of believing that your presence matters has a massive ripple effect of positivity. And I just want you to know that it matters that you allow yourself to matter. And I get that it's scary. I get that it might be really uncomfortable. And that's why I want to really focus this channel, not just on giving awareness or even acceptance of where we are and who we are, but to be able to start creating action steps, true plans, so that we can say, okay, this is where we are. I accept myself. I see the gap from where I am to where I want to go, and this is how we're going to get there. So again, if you find this valuable, interesting, please like, comment, subscribe. It all helps the channel immensely. And I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you nuance? What would you add? What did I say that might not have landed totally? I really do like the idea that this channel is about more of being a living document versus me being like, I have the answers. Like, this is what I've explored so far. And I want to hear from you what your actual experience is, and then to continue this channel with that really valuable information. So, all right, I will end this here. If you've watched all of the videos to this series, amazing. Hello, welcome, thank you. That's incredible. And I cannot wait to see you in the next video. Okay, bye.